also exam bodies. This Umalusi commissioned out the study to ethics, which is formerly known as UK Qualifications and Skills Standards. It is internationally trusted and respected the reference point for qualifications and skills standards. For that reason, the research was conducted by a gold standard provider of solutions and services in international education, training and skills, and in the development and the recognition of globally portable qualifications. In the study, Umalusi benchmarked the National Senior Certificate against 5 qualifications and programs, namely the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program, the Kenyan Certificate of Secondary Education, the New South Wales Higher Education Certificates, and the Zimbabwean Form 5 to 6 Advanced Level, and the Cambridge Assessment International Education AS and A levels. This benchmark took into account curriculum design, assessment frameworks and approaches, content, learning outcomes, knowledge and skills, and the findings and the recommendations were presented by Dr. Thomas Colville and Mrs. Abigail Jones. Both of them are senior officials of ACTIS. And the overarching findings are that the National Senior Certificate has demonstrable lines of comparability with upper secondary qualifications in each of the benchmark systems. The NEC is an effectively designed upper secondary education qualification which aims to develop high-order thinking skills and desirable and future-focused makes the argument that the National Senior Certificate provides its holders with an internationally comparable level of education. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is pleasing that the study found a greater degree of alignment between our national certificate and other qualifications in terms of design, intended curriculum, and assessment methods. As a sector, we are very excited with the report because it does confirm that our system is now stable and reputable and can be trusted. So on the state of readiness for our exams, the Department of Basic Education and the Provincial Education Departments are currently preparing for the administration of the November 22 National Senior Certificates. The grade 12 learners will be sitting, as I say, tomorrow for the big question paper. They've already written some of the small question papers during the course of this week. There has been gradual increase in the number of full-time enrollments in 2022 as compared to the previous years. Dr. Rufus Polia will give details in a short while regarding the technical aspects of the examination. What I can say, however, is that we have gone to great lengths to ensure that the examinations happen with no irregularities. DBE has stepped up its security across all points in the question paper chain based on a continuous review of all examination processes. In addition, all learners for the National Senior Certificate examinations and their parents have signed commitment agreement to maintain honesty and to participate in not to participate in irregularities during the writing of the exams. The commitment agreement binds the learners and parents to follow the rules relating to exams. So in line with this agreement, learners and parents are obliged to make any irregularity-related information immediately available to the school principal or the DBE hotline. They are also expected to surrender cell phones and any other related device if there is an allegation of involvement in an act of dishonesty. So learners are briefed on all the rules and regulations pertaining to the examination and the consequences should they be implicated in irregularities. So DBE can confidently state that it is fully prepared to administer the November 2022 examinations based on the principles of fairness, reliability, validity, and integrity. Deputy Minister Dr. Reginah Mhaule, the Director General Mr. Mathanzima, Mweli, and myself, supported by managers in the departments, both provincial and national, have been traversing the country to monitor schools, and it is clear, based on our findings, that we have a great challenge in our hands, but the systems are ready. So in conclusion, I really want to make a special appeal to all of us to rally behind the matric class of 2022. I really wish to thank the Deputy Minister and all my colleagues in the provinces, the MECs, for the work done this year to keep schools open with teaching and learning continuing. We are still implementing the curriculum recovery following the impact of COVID-19 on schooling. And I will now ask Dr. Polia to come forward and make presentations regarding the state of readiness for the 2022 exams. Thank you very much, Dr. And thank you very much, Elijah.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you for the short presentation. I'm going to ask the DG Minister to just make opening remarks just before the technical presentation. Mr. Mhaule.
Thank you. Minister, Deputy Minister, colleagues from the department, the team of exams led by Dr. Polia, colleagues from the media, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Minister, the Deputy Minister, all MECs, HODs, and all officials in the basic education sector for having worked very hard to prepare for the class of 2022. We are going to try and give a story of 12 to 13 years of schooling in about 45 minutes to an hour. We made this presentation, Minister, to the Portfolio Committee of Basic Education last Tuesday. It took us 2 to 3 hours, but we are not going to go through it in 2 to 3 hours. We are going to shorten the presentation. And the team that's going to handle the presentation, Dr. Polia, we thought that we must keep him waiting, Minister, for the most difficult questions. He's got 34 years in exams, 34 years, which is an experience that is very rare. So we decided to keep him for last as our best to come and answer the most difficult questions. We have met with provinces on Thursday to do our final assessment of readiness, because exams will begin in earnest tomorrow, as the Minister correctly indicated. Virtually all learners will be writing exams, close to 900,000 if you include part-time candidates, will be sitting for exams for tomorrow. So we've met with provinces on Friday. We've met with all 5 teacher unions yesterday, Minister, from 12 to 2 o'clock. And we've also met the Association of School Governing Bodies after that. The last group that we met with yesterday was the professional bodies in the basic education sector. All of them have declared their unqualified support during these exams. They've also undertaken to remain vigilant to assist with whatever eventuality that might come up during this time. Our exams are taking place during the rainy season in our country. Some parts of our country have already experienced storms, and we are alive to whatever possibility on the ground. Without any waste of time, Minister, I'm going to invite Mrs. Priscilla Okubanjo, who is going to take us through the first part of the presentation, and then the second part of the presentation is going to be done by Dr. Similane. No, I've got it wrong. The first part is going to be handled by Dr. Similane. which is about learner readiness, which takes about 75% of the presentation. So the 25% is about system readiness. I beg your pardon for that. Can we please welcome Dr. Similani? Dr. Similani is the Chief Director for Curriculum. He's going to take us through the first part of the presentation. Thank you.
A very special greeting to the Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, Director General, Babu Mweli, my colleagues from the department, and all personnel from the media houses. As the Director General has directed, I'll be making the presentation on the state of learner readiness in particular. Looking at the class of 2021 and what measures have been put in place to try and mitigate, in particular, the effects of COVID-19, which this class has really experienced tremendously, as we all are aware. All right, by way of introduction to the class of 2022, we all know that this class of 2022 was actually in grade 10 in 2020 when COVID-19 struck. There were a number of intervention measures that were put in place, like, for instance, making sure that all learners returned to school by the end of July 2020, and then a rotational attendance was introduced. The curriculum was trimmed. Assessment programs were adapted to the trimmed curriculum. And there was also an introduction of mechanisms to allow learners to continue learning from home. We know that this class only had full attendance in 2022, only this year. Otherwise, it's been subjected to rotational attendance. And more importantly, and which is also could be a matter of concern, is that this is the largest cohort that will be sitting for the National Senior Certificate Examination end of this year. In terms of learner support, dating back to 2020, when this class of 2022 was in grade 10, there were broadcast lessons, radio lessons, self-study resources, and introduction of remote learning, online and virtual schools. There were also support packages for teachers. Examples are lesson plans, PowerPoint presentations, topic tests, etc. There were also videos on content topics, introduction to learning from home, as I've already indicated. When they were in grade 11, a number of intervention and support measures were introduced and instituted. There was continuation of lesson plans with activities, videos with lesson recordings, WhatsApp group between teachers and between teachers and learners. Websites were utilized both for online platforms with curriculum and assessment materials. virtual teaching sessions, radio lessons provided for revisions, and all other intervention measures. Let's look at the class of 2022 in the year 2022 and what support has been provided from the provincial level to this class of 2022. I'm just going to present on a selection of provinces, not go through all intervention measures in all the provinces. Maybe let me start with Eastern Cape as an example. There were extended hour programs during the mornings and the afternoon classes, LTSM in the form of soft and hard copies of the Mind the Gap study guides. Mock exams was written in June to prepare, because this group is actually the most unfit group for the National Senior Certificate Examination. Online lessons, live streaming of virtual lessons through VLC app, telematics videos, radio lessons, teacher development workshops, which were face-to-face and virtual modes, and as well as weekend classes. Continuation in terms of learner support, the Eastern Cape Province, as an example, targeted technical mathematics and isiXhosa home languages, and also made intervention and support measures in those subjects. But there were also support measures that were directed to teachers as well. Some of those support measures were directed at setting of standard setting. There were meetings that brought teachers together to make sure that the assessment tasks were set according to the minimum standards, as it is maintained at grade 12. Thank you. So the objective was to set targets for the academic year ahead and to address content challenges as diagnosed in the diagnostic and chief markers reports. So there was a wide scope. This actually started from January through to May. These interventions that were directed at supporting teachers. For instance, in January, 900 teachers on average attended those intervention measures, as well as in March, and then in May, we saw about 205 on average teachers attending those. Let me move to the next province, will be Gauteng. In this case, as an example, again, 4,740 grade 11 and 12 classroom LED boards preloaded with digital content in the form of e-books as per school curriculum, multimedia content in the form of digital lessons, study guides and examination enhancements, subject content developed by curriculum specialists and teachers in PDF format. Subjects that were prioritized in Gauteng, in the main, were mathematics and English FAO. I won't get into the specific in terms of the support measures and intervention measures. But by way of supporting teachers in Gauteng, the province instituted the just-in-time content training to all teachers with the objective of increasing learner performance and attainment in the subject, train teachers on study and examination preparation skills to increase the number of bachelor passes in the subject, as well as close content gaps on challenging topics. These are some of the measures, and in terms of number of learners that were targeted by supporting educators, the province actually targeted about 62,000, about 63,000 learners, and the number of learners that were reached were about 23,000. in that region. That is about 80% of the targeted number of learners. Let me move on let me pick on Limpopo as an example. Extended contact time through morning and afternoon lessons, Saturday classes February and March 2022, extra tuition through autumn schools, common mid-year assessments, teacher training regarding SBAs, etc. These are some of the support measures instituted in the province. The province targeted in the main physical sciences as well as tourism as example of subjects that are more challenging, that were found to be challenging in the province. I'm then going to move on to maybe the Western Cape as the last example of a province where intervention and support measures were instituted to the class of 2022. In terms of learner support, there was extension of school day in some districts to ensure curriculum completion, catch-up programs at identified schools on Saturdays, weekly self-directed lessons available on e-portal with subject support packages, revision material developed per subject per term, as well as telematic booklets in 12 subjects, virtual lessons, recordings. I'll go to, subjects targeted in this regard were mathematical literacy in particular, as well as Afrikaans home language, and that is based on previous performance in these subjects in the province. Now let's come to DBE. What support measures and intervention measures were instituted from the national level? In terms of learner support, we implemented remote and digital learning projects of various forms, where the whole strategy was to make sure that we support the system to increase the use of remote and digital learning modalities. That is why we introduced these platforms. Some change levers and key activities include social capital, advocacy and communication awareness, content provision, multiple platforms, access teacher development activities. At second level, that is second managers, SMTs and subject advisors, just to mention a few, and also making sure that we continue to monitor and evaluate our intervention measures as basic education. There was also a Matric campaign. Matric campaign outputs had intended outputs. For instance, content provision, multiple access platforms, a total of 2,683 hours of video lessons were broadcasted. Accounting, business studies, economics, EFAL, geography, history, life sciences, mathematical literacy, mathematics, and physical science were the subjects that were actually broadcast online. We utilize our television, our DBE TV channel 122. We also utilize the radio platforms, 12 SABC radio stations, print media, digital platforms, Matric Live, and MTN online school, YouTube channels, etc. were part of delivering on the WOZA Matrix. In terms of the reach, there was a high reach. The WOZA Matric program ran from January through to September, and the reach was the highest, almost reaching 780 viewers in January, and in September we reached about 450,000 viewers. On average, there was a Matric DBE broadcast, actually on a monthly basis, reached about 490 viewers. I've already, in terms of WOZA metrics on television and radio, as I've indicated already, 2,683 lessons were broadcast, and on radio, there were 93 lessons that were broadcast. So TV examination guide and preparations, preparation lessons are lessons that are shared on WOZA Matrix, a YouTube channel. Radio lessons are converted into podcasts hosted on Iono FM. Most views shows, actually in the main, I think it's the most viewed subjects are history, on the civil rights movement, mathematics, similar triangles, mathematical literacy, on data handling. On YouTube channel, maybe let me not get to all these specifics in terms of the platforms that we used for the WOZA metric, but just to say that from January to September, WOZA metric's website had 243,271 page viewers. Mobile app support to Matric, that is the Matric Live. That was actually mostly utilized in Gauteng in terms of those who tuned in. On Matric Live, learners register for different subjects, access interactive lessons, and take simulated examinations based on past National Senior Certificate examinations. Then what are the next steps? From DBE, it's exam preparation, interactive TV lessons, radio lessons, virtual tutoring, exam simulations, that is through Matric Live, as well as care and support for teaching and learning to provide psychosocial support to the learners. Consultative processes to explore long-term integration on remote digital learning approaches into teaching and assessment, and we've also begun planning for 2023. We have multiple partners who worked with us within all these intervention measures. I may not mention a few unless lest I leave some important ones out. There are also materials that we've developed this year, like new metric study guides, 42 study guides for 13 subjects, which I'm not going to actually go through them. We also have about, in low enrollment subjects, there were 24 study guides that were developed for those 9 low enrollment subjects. Distribution of the study guides. We distribute our study guides utilizing different platforms. All new study guides were digitally distributed to the DBE and partners, and they are posted in the DBE webpage. They have also been distributed via the WOZA Matrix website. Additionally, the guides are being used by implementation partners like Matric Live, as well as virtual tutoring services. In terms of DBE's ICT support, we've also engaged in providing, in ensuring ICT integration in teaching, learning, and assessment. There are different ICT platforms. We have made our materials available offline as well as online, but with the online provision of the distribution of the content, we made sure that the distribution of the content is through zero-rated national and provincial portals. ICT equipment and connectivity. Provision of devices, hardware, and connectivity to grade 12 learners is as follows. Virtual classrooms in 18 schools established through DBE, Department of Communication and Digital Technology, as well as a CASA partnership to support grade 12 learners schools and grade 12 learner devices are connected through SIM cards. Tablets, laptops, preloaded with content and connectivity, as well as hard drives to 326 secondary schools in the Free State, specifically teacher development and monitoring. From the DBE, teacher development is conducted to ensure that educators are equipped with skills to integrate ICT into teaching and learning, as I've already indicated. So the teacher development took place across provinces, and also there were teacher development activities for integrating ICT into teaching and learning, which were conducted at DBE or by the National Department. Monitoring of ICT implementation is conducted at DBE provincial and district levels. DBE LTSM support mathematics workbooks were provided to grades 8 and 9 across the provinces. I'm not going to get into details. We also are looking at online utilization of Siyavula textbooks, Mind the Gap study guides in a variety of subjects. And then we come to the monitoring the effectiveness and quality of learner support classes. That is the extra classes that are conducted throughout the year. We have autumn classes that start around autumn. We have got winter classes. For instance, with regard to the autumn classes, DBE monitored 154 schools. But with winter classes, DBE visited 188 schools or centers. And most of these, all of these extra classes were actually conducted face-to-face this year, because we have the we have COVID-19 that has been lifted. So it's been face-to-face through and through. And the purpose of the support programs was mainly for revision of the work already covered from the school, and also the teaching of the new content, which we refer to as curriculum coverage. In terms of autumn classes, our DG visited 84 schools or centers during the autumn season. Then in the main, the purpose for the enrichment classes, as I've indicated, was revision as well as curriculum coverage and teaching of the new content. Teachers who were utilized in the main were teachers who are top performing teachers from different schools, as well as teachers from the same, from their own schools that were running the autumn classes. And then learners, these actually provided for all grade 12 learners in the schools that ran the centers. The duration was 5 days of 6 hours each. Attendance was very good. It was between 80 and 100% attendance during the autumn classes. There were teaching and learning resources that were provided, some of which I've already mentioned. Languages that were on offer in the main. English FAL was the main language that was targeted, and I think we understand why. It's because most of the question papers are actually set in English. So that is why proficiency in English will come in handy. Non-language subjects offered during autumn. It's all gateway subjects that were offered at all centers, and the most commonly offered subjects across the centers during autumn were accounting, business studies, economics, mathematics, maths literacy, life sciences, physical sciences, geography, and history. Then let's move to winter classes. DG visited and monitored 108, which is a number bigger than the number that he covered during the autumn classes. And in the main, we still had the two main purposes for the winter classes. That is, revision was actually the main focus, followed by curriculum coverage. to some extent. And the criteria for selecting schools for the winter programs, in the main, it was underperforming schools. They were given attention and they were given all the support and all the intervention measures to make sure that we can turn the tide in terms of their performance. That was followed by schools that were clustered according to subject fields, schools that are offering common subjects. We still had top performing teachers in the main, as well as grade 12 teachers from the schools that were running the programs. All grade 12 learners also were targeted for winter school programs. The duration was 10 days of 6 hours each, but there were centers. We saw an increasing number of centers where the number of hours straddled between 8 and 10 per day. Actual attendance as well was very good, between 80 and 100%. Teaching and learning materials were also provided. In this case, the highly offered language, again, during winter classes was English first additional language, followed by isiZulu home language, then by isiXhosa home language. Non-language subjects, high enrollment subjects were on offer, and then in the main, subjects that were common across the majority of the centers were mathematics, maths lit, life sciences, physical sciences, agricultural sciences, geography, history, accounting, business studies, and economics. Selection of topics in the main, the topics per subjects were selected because they were viewed as most challenging or common challenging topics selected by the district through the subject advisory services, and also utilizing subject improvement plans, provincial diagnostic reports, and DBE diagnostic reports. It is also laudable, and this needs to be mentioned, that learners were also provided with an opportunity to select topics for the support classes. Learner support responses, when we do the monitoring of these extra classes as basic education, we also, officials also observe lessons. They have an opportunity of going to class and observe lessons. They also interact not only with the school management or the center management, but also with learners as well, so that we can establish the extent to which these extra classes are benefiting the learners. So, for instance, a majority of learners, about 94%, indicated that these extra classes were very beneficial to them. So this is a step in the right direction from the sector. I won't talk to all other responses that we got from the learners, but just to say that specifically when it comes to the winter school programs, about 98.8% of the learners found these winter classes very helpful. In terms of highlights, summarize from learner interviews conducted across the provinces, well, we were asking questions like the kind of support, whether the support is effective that they are receiving, even questions like the number of which subjects did learners find them most beneficial, and which subjects did learners find less beneficial during these extra classes, just to get things into perspective. Finally, going to now spring classes, DG visited 81 spring classes, which were run in the first week, from the first week of October. And then here, in the main purpose for the spring classes, because we are already at the end of the year, it's mainly revision. In terms of type of centers, the majority of the centers were centers that were sort of established by the districts and sort of run by the district, followed by schools that actually made their own, organized their own spring classes, and then, of course, the second clusters. Contact hours were in the main 6 hours per day for 5 days in the majority of the centers. Attendance was again at its highest in the majority of centers, between 80 and 100%. Languages offered, we still see English first additional languages being the dominant language that was offered across the centers, and of course Sepedi in this case, as well as isiXhosa, were the second highest. Technical subjects were also on offer, because we have seen that the performance in technical subjects is not where we desire it to be. That is why in most centers where these subjects are being offered, these subjects were also on offer as well. Without getting into specifics, quality of teaching observed, as I indicated, that officials do observe lessons and also interact with learners. The quality of teaching and learning during these extra classes was overall of good quality. Some best practices that were observed during these extra classes, it's the recruitment of best teachers in different subjects who are recruited from different schools, and the districts are actually involved in doing the recruitment. Provision of supervised studies in the evenings. I visited one of the schools in Limpopo. It was actually a center where the center manager indicated that their day starts at 8 and it finishes at 11 at night. And then in the evening, it's study time throughout, and the study is supervised by teachers, which is very encouraging, with an opportunity to do homework and study, partnerships to assist in the provision of learner support and provision of learners transport and meals, the use of integration of ICT, prepared revision materials for teachers and learners, subject registers used to track learner attendance throughout the day, learner motivation sessions, career exhibitions on one of the days, forging partnerships with former students, as well as collaboration with well-resourced centers and top-performing teachers, individualized differentiated support classes, which were run. Let me skip the distinct features. Maybe let me move to conclusion in the interest of time. I'm afraid I've taken much time than I was supposed to. In conclusion, the class of 2022, the largest cohort to date, is the class that has been mostly severely and negatively affected. They had 2 years of COVID-19 effect or impact. The learning deficiencies that existed prior to the lockdown and regulations that disrupted schooling has also increased manifold. While we acknowledge the efforts by the sector to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on learning, we implore all provinces to increase efforts to support this class to ensure they cross the finish line successfully. The upcoming weeks, provinces intensify their efforts and support initiatives as the sector walk the class of 2022 into the examination room, as Minister has already announced that exams are starting tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister.
Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, Director General, and senior officials of the DBE, as well as members of the press. Good morning to everyone. I am going to be providing information on the examination system readiness, following what Dr. Simelane already did. And I think upfront I just want to indicate that the management of national exams and assessment has managed to adapt to the disruptive changes in the environment, and exam credibility has been retained and continues to be improved. So despite interruptions of COVID-19 and all that we went through in the last 2 years, the exam system remains credible.
Okay, and of course we come out of Pretoria there. That's just basically an overview and an update of what went into the process of ensuring that the class of 2022 is ready to sit for their Matric exams, which start tomorrow. And of course the emphasis being put around how this particular class was the one that was most affected by COVID-19, seeing that they had to deal with the most basically around, some challenges around learner attendance in class. And of course this is the class that was most severely affected by COVID-19, seeing that they were hit for 3 years running. And of course, just their detail
and coordinating across all provinces, monitoring and also reporting and feedback. The exam cycle is an 18-month cycle. So although we're going into the writing phase currently, but this started 18 months ago with the setting of question papers, 12 months ago with the registration of candidates, printing, packing, storage, and distribution, preparation for the writing, and now we're going into the writing phase. And of course, after the writing, we will be going into marking, capturing of those marks, release of results, and finally certification. And in all of these phases, DBE has worked collaboratively with all our 9 provinces as well as our 75 districts. As you already heard earlier on in the briefing, exams begin officially tomorrow, the 31st of October, and will conclude on the 7th of December 2022. Now, going straight into the size and scope of these exams, we have the largest cohort so far in terms of full-time candidates. 753,964 candidates have registered to write this examination as full-time candidates. This is the largest we've had so far. And also this is actually an increase compared to 2021. You would recall that in 2020, the number of part-time candidates dropped, of course, because of the COVID, but we started picking up again last year, and we are seeing that trend also continuing this year. Now, in terms of each province, every province, the enrollments have also increased. In the case of KZN, we see a very small, negligible drop, which we do not consider significant, because KZN remains the province with the largest enrollment. 25% of our candidature comes from KwaZulu-Natal, and this year they still have 174,413 candidates writing in KZN. I may not give you the details of each of the numbers of each province, but I think we can provide that later in the interest of time. Now, with our part-time enrollments as well, in the case of part-time enrollments, although we have seen increases, the increase actually comes in the province of Gauteng, where we have 12,770 candidates more than we had previously. So Gauteng this year, the part-timers are 55,657. That's for Gauteng alone. Across the other provinces, we see slight drops with regards to the number of part-time candidates, but on the whole, when you put the national figure together, we still have a higher number than we had in 2021. Now, we also have a group of candidates we call progress learners, and these are learners who usually would not meet the full requirements to be progressed to the next grade, but in terms of policy, following certain basic criteria, they can be moved. But in this year, as we have seen also in the last 2 years, the number of progress learners have reduced. that tells us that our learners are passing in their own right. They are able to meet the requirements on their own, and therefore they don't even need to be progressed. And so you would find that if you compare the number of progressed learners for 2022 compared to 2021, the numbers have reduced. This year we have 53,032 progressed learners compared to 61,789 progressed learners we had in 2021. Now, going to our subject enrollments, of course, because our general enrollments have increased this year, it will also follow that in most of our subjects, the enrollments will increase. And that is what we have seen in the case of all our major subjects. The enrollments have increased, of course, except for our subjects, the BCM group, we call the Business and Commercial Management subjects. That is where we have seen a drop across the three subjects in that subject field, that is accounting, business studies, and economics. Unfortunately, we see drops of about 1,000 or 2,000 less than we had in 2021. But across all the other subjects, we have increases. We're also delighted to indicate an increase in the participation in mathematics. We have 277,295 candidates registered for maths this year, although we still have two-thirds of our learners registering for mathematical literacy compared to mathematics, but we welcome this increase of 11,344 compared to the previous year. When we look at other subjects like the technology subjects, which were introduced not too long ago, across all our technology specializations as well, we see increases. Although the increases are small at this stage, but they are welcome because we're moving in the right trajectory. We want to upfront also indicate that our throughput rate, that's the number of learners going through the FET phase from grade 10 to 12, has also increased. This particular cohort, when they were in grade 10 in 2020, there were 948,265 of them, and 89.4% of them met the requirements to progress from grade 10 to grade 11 in 2021. And now in grade 12, 79.5% of them have met that requirement. So in other words, we can say our throughput rate for this cohort is about 79.5%. And if you go across the provinces, most provinces are on that level of 70% and above. Some provinces even at a level of 94%, like in the case of Gauteng. Only 2 provinces have a throughput rate that is less than 70%. And so that for us is a good progress that we would want to mention. Now, going into the exam system preparation, very quickly, in the interest of time, one of the key processes that is important in examination management is the registration of candidates, making sure that our candidates are timeously and accurately registered will ensure that when it's time for resulting, every candidate is able to get their results. For the second time this year, we have been able to upload data of candidates from our school, South African schools as administration and management systems onto the integrated exams computer system. So we are no longer actually capturing every candidate's data at the beginning of the year. Instead, we can just transfer from one system to another. And that is in keeping with modernizing our system. And we are saying that this is the second year we're doing it, and we hope that that is the new trajectory that we are going to be following. So schedules have been printed, sent out to schools, corrections have been made to ensure that what is on the system is the accurate data for that particular learner, so that when it comes to resulting, the correct learner gets the correct results and with the correct details. Question papers have been set. 162 question papers have been set by expert panels at the Department of Basic Education. These were quality assured and approved by Umalusi. They've been quality assured, translated, and edited by our in-house editors. They have been brailled. We have audio versions, adapted for the deaf, large prints, so that all our learners with special needs have been accommodated in the final preparation of the question papers. Now, we also want to mention South African Sign Language Home Language, which is a subject that we introduced, or that was written in grade 12 for the first time about 5 years ago. So this is the 5th cohort that we are having this year. And for the first time, all provinces have candidates that are going to be writing South African Sign Language Home Language. We have 23 schools that are going to be writing, and we have 271 candidates, double the number of candidates that we had last year. And their question papers have already been signed and video recorded, and provinces have already carried out audits of the systems to ensure that the administration of South African Sign Language Home Language goes without any glitches. Our provinces are ready to print, pack, store, and deliver question papers accordingly, so that at the morning of every examination, 9 o'clock, every candidate's question paper accordingly as prescribed will be on their table. This year, DBE has worked very closely with state security agencies to audit our sites and ensure that they meet all the criteria, the security criteria for storing question papers and avoid glitches. The examination is going to be written in 6,307 public schools and 578 independent centers. And that is where mainly exams will be written. We do have a couple of adult education and training centers and a few other centers we call designated centers, which are set or established by provinces to accommodate other candidates who are not accommodated in public schools. The DBE has also conducted an audit of all of a sample of our high-risk centers. Now, high-risk centers are centers that have had previous irregularities or just maladministration in examination, where exam has not been properly administered, maybe a script has been lost or whatever. We've classified those as high risk, and we have audited those centers, and we have recommended the monitoring dispensation for those particular centers to curb such issues. Various forms of concessions have been also granted to our learners with special needs so that they are not disadvantaged during the writing of the exam. So in some cases, candidates have been granted extra time, scribes or readers, amanuenses, rest breaks, prompters, etc. as required. In terms of marking, all provinces have completed marker selections. So our markers have been selected in line with the PAM criteria. In other words, they must have 3 years school qualification, and also at least 2 years post-school qualification in the subject that they are appointed to mark, as well as 2 years experience in the last 5 years in the subjects that they are expected to mark. So this has all been concluded, and DBE has also conducted an audit to ensure that every province has actually kept the criteria in terms of selecting markers. This year, we are expecting 53,926 markers across all the 9 provinces. And we can give you the details of how many markers we have per province if you require that later. But just to upfront indicate that the largest number of markers, of course, will be in Gauteng, 12,615, and in KZN, 10,457. Our marking centers have been audited, and they have been evaluated in terms of their suitability and capacity to host the marking. DBE will host marking as well, but for a group of subjects we call small enrollment subjects. These are subjects that the numbers of entries are too small for provinces to be able to appoint the different levels of quality assurance and moderation. So to ensure that marking quality is not compromised, DBE has taken those subjects over and has pooled the human resources in terms of the few markers and teachers across provinces to gather and to still be able to mark those subjects. That will happen in Pretoria, as well as the marking of South African Sign Language Home Language, which DBE has taken over the responsibility as well. Now, In total, we are expecting to have 187 marking centers across all provinces. Now, before marking, there is a quality assurance process that must go on. One of the aspects we call marking standardization meetings. It's where we have all our chief markers, internal moderators from all provinces gathering to discuss the memo and finalize the marking guidelines, and also have a final stamp of approval by Umalusi. At this point, all alternative answers, because the chief markers would have done pre-marking of certain scripts, so all alternative answers that are accurate will be included in the marking guidelines so that all candidates are accommodated. We are going to have a total of 150 of such marking guideline standardization meetings, and we have appointed what we call independent chairpersons, who are officials in the Department of Education across the country. They are going to chair those meetings, while the internal moderators as well as Umalusi facilitate the discussions. During those meetings as well, on the last 2 days, there will be a process of training of all chief markers and internal moderators, as well as a process which we call authorization, where copies of live scripts will be provided to chief markers and internal moderators to mark. There will be what we call a tolerance range, which is actually an error margin that is allowed for them to mark, and only those who are able to mark within the tolerance range in at least 66% or 2/3 of the papers that are given to them will be authorized to lead the marking process in their provinces. This same form of training and authorization is expected to be replicated across all provinces before marking starts. Now, in terms of the quality assurance as well, moderation by senior markers, deputy chief markers, and chief markers and internal moderators must happen across all provinces. We have a structure in which you have 5 to 7 markers supervised by one senior marker, and that is what is going to happen across all the provinces. There will be close monitoring of the marking by DBE. Our DG also will be monitoring marking across all provinces. All provinces have clear plans to capture marks after marking. The data capturers have been appointed across all provinces, and provinces have identified capturing venues outside the marking venues. A double capture method will be used. That is the method we always use, so that more than one person captures. One person captures, another person verifies, so that there is accuracy and correctness of the marks that are captured. Now, the examination cycle is always monitored. Right from, I showed you what the exam cycle actually comprises of. There are so many activities. So every activity in the exam cycle is monitored. And I indicated that clear norms and standards are set for each of these processes, and these are mediated to provincial managers that are convened at the DBE at different times in the year. So this year also, the DBE conducted what we call a review of exam systems across all provinces. This review was conducted in May and June, and following that, we also had an intensive review of district exam systems, and we were able to review at least 55 of our 75 districts, that's 73%, and ensure that they are completely in compliance with all the systems and processes. A final state of readiness was also conducted in September and October, and that is why we're able to indicate that our provinces and districts and schools are ready to write this examination. Now, as part of our monitoring, we conducted 5 key audits. It's the audits of registration data, printing facilities, high-risk examination centers, marker appointments, and storage points. All of these audits actually support the monitoring process and gather relevant information in terms of the readiness of the system. We are expecting that every province will be able to monitor or have a monitoring coverage of at least 70%. What we mean by that is that during the conduct of the examination, at least 70% of the centers must be monitored on a daily basis. Now, but in other words, we expect that the high-risk centers must be monitored daily. In some cases, actually, the districts and the provinces will take over the management of examinations in the high-risk centers. But apart from that, we're expecting a 70% coverage. In fact, some provinces have indicated they're going to be able to have 100% coverage, meaning exams will be monitored in every school every day when examinations are written. At the DBE level as well, at the national level, we have appointed 62 part-time monitors. We have our colleagues from the School Improvement and Support team. We have our QLTC, and all of those are going to be part of the monitoring team from the DBE that will also be going out to support provincial and district monitors. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with large-scale public examinations, there will always be some irregularities. But the provinces, the important thing is that we need to be able to manage these irregularities, detect them, and manage them appropriately. And I think today we can indicate that our provinces are ready. They are able to, they've been trained, and they have appointed officials to detect, investigate, and manage these irregularities. So plans are in place for the resolution of all irregularities, whether they are administrative errors and omissions, or they are behavioral offenses or acts of dishonesty. Plans are in place to conclude all of those before the announcement of results. Because what we do not want is to have candidates' results withheld unnecessarily, or if those hearings and all of those processes can be concluded before the release of results. I think up front we also want to mention, we know that in 2020 we did have a glitch of a leakage, unfortunately, and that case is still in court, and the culprit has appeared in court a couple of times already, and a new trial date has been set for the 5th of December 2022. So basically the DBE is leaving no stone unturned and is not relenting in ensuring that those who do anything untoward to impact negatively on examination credibility are actually brought to book. But beyond that, I think we want to be proactive, and therefore we've gone out to look at strategies to curb examination irregularities. And topmost on those strategies is a greater advocacy to our learners, our teachers, and our principals, encouraging integrity. Now, you would have noticed also that the DBE Chief Communicator has initiated a lot of advocacy programs focusing on exam readiness and has highlighted the issue of exam irregularities and the consequences of that. So that has been going out for a long time, and I believe that our communities, our learners, and our parents have taken note. In addition to that, parents and learners have been asked to sign a commitment agreement which binds them to follow specific exam rules. Now, the first is to make any irregularity information available immediately to the principal. The second is to surrender any cell phones where any exam material could have been transmitted if there is an allegation of involvement. And of course, we also want to make our learners aware that if you accept assistance in the exam room, then unfortunately you are complicit. So we are appealing to our learners that even if somebody decides to come and help you, because we know that most of the time our learners do not ask for that help. If somebody decides to come and help you, you must raise an alarm and you must refuse the help. Because if you accept the help, unfortunately, then you become complicit. So that was the part of what was in the agreement that we asked our learners and parents to sign. The exam hotline is available 24/7, and the candidates have also signed a pledge at a public ceremony to confirm their non-participation in acts of dishonesty during the writing of the exams. Now, some important dates I want to give you in terms of the release of results. We are expecting that marks will be completely captured by the 27th of December, because we are marking from the 10th of December to the 22nd of December. Most provinces materials will be moving to marking centers from the 7th of December already. So by the 22nd, before Christmas, we should have done, we should be completed with marking, and by the 27th, all marks captured. The irregularities committee will sit on the 30 to 31 December. Pre-standardization will happen at the DBE on the 4th and 5th of January 2023. Umalusi standardization on the 6th of January 2023. And we expect that Umalusi will pronounce on the approval of results by the 12th of January, and the Minister of Basic Education will announce the results to the country on the 19th of January 2023, and that will be followed by provincial releases the next day on the 20th of January. Just to indicate in terms of the POPIA, consent must be obtained from learners and parents with regards to the publication of their results in newspapers or media platforms. And so early this year already, DBE issued out consent forms to our learners, and these learners signed them, and that has been captured on the system. So already we know the learners who have agreed for the publication of their results, and that is what is going to happen in 2022. Now, there are just a few risks. I'm coming close to the end now. Risks that have been identified. In any activity or major activity of such, there will be risks. And so the system has identified this risk, but have also indicated the mitigation strategies. I will go through very quickly some of the risks that we have identified and what the mitigation strategies are. We do know that in some provinces, our staffing is not up to the level that we expect. We are understaffed at some directorates, but then the provinces are pulling from other directorates to assist, especially in the monitoring. Because if you are going to monitor 100% capacity, you need more people to be on ground, so that is what they're going to be doing. Group copying, unfortunately, is something that we have also experienced in the previous years, and hence we're having all this advocacy against irregularities. But the training of our invigilators and monitors have been improved, and we are appealing to our invigilators and monitors to be very stringent and very vigilant in their monitoring and invigilation. Load shedding, unfortunately, is something that we've had to live with a couple of years now, and we were also prepared for the computer applications technology and IT that had already been written, and provinces do have the contingency plans, but DBE continues to work very closely with ESCOM. Meetings with senior management of ESCOM has been happening, and our provinces have been advised in terms of other contingencies as generators, etc. Now, security breaches in terms of leakage of question papers. As I mentioned, there's advocacy on the consequences. There's a 24/7 hotline. We've tightened our distribution chain. The State Security Agency is working very closely with us as well. We do know sometimes during exams we have community protests, and as a result of that, some deliveries may not be able to get to the school, or candidates may not be able to access their centers on time. We have told our candidates that in such cases where roads are barricaded and they cannot get to their centers, they can write at the closest centers and the administration will sort it out. And we're working with our Prof Jogs and our Nat Jog, and so that we can have proper intelligence information on time, and our deliveries can be diverted through alternative routes if it comes to. With the issues of water restrictions, and I know that that may impact on the marking, and also at this point, DBE is in the process of identifying with the Department of Water Affairs areas that will be subjected to water restrictions, especially in December 2022 when the marking takes place. With regards to inclement weather, SANDF has also been informed to be on standby. We are aware that at this time, there's a lot of improvements in technology, and we have all kinds of electronic devices that we may not even be aware of that candidates have. So there's a risk, the technology risk there. So we have identified that as well, and that is why in the commitment agreement we've asked candidates to surrender their cell phones, to sign that they will surrender their cell phones if need be for an investigation. but smartwatches and other electronic devices will not be allowed in the examination rooms. Also, we have what we call an electronic devices register, where every candidate must register the number of the cell phones that they're using throughout this examination period in case we need to access that. Now, finally, progress with the last 2 days of exam. As already others have mentioned, the main exam is starting on Monday, but the last 2 days we've had CAT and IT, and although we did worry about load shedding, but we were able to manage it. In some cases, we had late start to the exam. Other cases, we had an early start, managing to avoid the period of load shedding. And I think we can indicate that all our candidates were able to write. Unfortunately, there's only one school in Gauteng where when the electricity came back, actually, the computers were blown. They were blown off because of the power surge, I think. So 14 computers were blown off, and therefore 14 candidates, their work was destroyed because they had already started, so they will have to rewrite on the 7th of December. Now, you should also note that in terms of our normal protocols, for subjects like computer applications, technology, and IT, there's already a programmed rewrite because there could be other computer glitches in terms of saving the work for whatever reason. So when we have assessed the situation, all those candidates who could have been compromised in one way or another will be given the opportunity to rewrite. So in conclusion, I just want to say that the support offered to the class of 2022 has assisted in addressing the disadvantage suffered by this class in the last 2 years. The 2022 academic year has been uninterrupted, and this has brought some stability to teaching and learning to this cohort. The DBE is confident that the class of 2022 will produce a performance that is equivalent or even better than the class of 2021. So in terms of the exam system, the DBE and provinces have improved and have strengthened all related processes. There's a high level of commitment by all officials and educators to ensure that this examination is administered without any serious incidents. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Priscilla, for the comprehensive presentation. We can now take questions. We shared the presentation with our colleagues from the media. If there are any questions arising out of that presentation, or even the Minister's presentation, please feel free to ask. Where at that point we'll entertain questions. I'm seeing one hand. Okay, we'll start with you when you're ready. All right, thank you so much. Seeing another hand in the back, please. All right, thank you. Okay, looks like it's those questions from the two colleagues. Minister, I'm not sure if you want to go first, or DG or DM. Thank you, Minister.
No, thank you very much for the questions, and maybe DG will come and assist in terms of our discussions with ESCOM. What is the content and the substance of the discussions? But we've been responding to this matter to say we will work around load shedding, and that's what we've been saying. So, and to get communication from ESCOM. In some instances, the paper, so it's us working around load shedding. Papers were written earlier to make sure that by the time there's load shedding, learners would have written. That's what is reported here. In some instances, papers were written later to make sure that we start writing after load shedding. So that's working around it. And that's what we say we'll work around it because it's here, it's a reality, and all we have to do is to make sure that our learners are protected. So I think DG will come and add on. The other issue also, which I thought we will talk about, DG, it's, as I say, it's a timetable for load shedding. It's not to throw our hands in the air. Even if there's load shedding, tomorrow we're writing English, so we'll use natural light. So it's really working around it to say it would have been risky to talk and I think we've gone past that risk where your ICT will need electricity, but English will require, we can deal with English with normal light. So it's going to be written during the day, whether there's load shedding or there's no load shedding, we'll continue to write. So for us, it's not to really panic and create some anxiety that here is load shedding, we're going to be in big trouble, but it's to encourage our people to say they must stay focused and do all that we can. So we knew we were going to do ICT, it needs electricity, that's why there were generators, sometimes it didn't work. So it's really working around it. I'm not sure that I'm simplifying the matter, DG. That will work around it. We can't throw our hands in the air. We can't create anxiety and panic and say there's going to be big trouble. Our kids have to remain relaxed. We'll work with them, make sure that we can put in place factors, measures. The computers were blown, no panic, we'll give them another date. So there shouldn't be any panic that we really generate to say there's big trouble, load shedding, your exams are going to be disrupted. We want them to remain focused, and we will do all we can to make sure that there's no panic around load shedding, because it's here, it's a reality, and exams have to run, and our children have to be relaxed and know that we'll do whatever it takes to protect the exams. But DG, maybe you can talk about what is the content of our discussions with ESCOM. But yeah, so if we say they shouldn't load shed because we're writing, hospitals that say don't load shed, they have patients, business say don't load shed, because we have to work around it. That's the real world that is facing us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Minister. Maybe to start with the last one that the Minister responded to exceptionally well. We tried our luck. Dr. Polia led the team. We met with ESCOM and say, can you exempt schools that are going to write CAT and IT? And it was very clear that it was impossible. It was impossible to do so because you would carry a much bigger security risk for the country when you do that. But what is good is that we are in constant engagement with ESCOM. They are able to give their projections, but as we all know, we know now that even if we are told that we're going to get stage 2 In the middle of stage 2, you can get stage 4, depending on the pressure exerted on the grid. And stage 4 is brought about to minimize even higher risk that could occur if you don't bring in stage 4. It's very uncomfortable, and I want to say, as the Minister said, we are not just going to work around load shedding. We have CAT and IT. We were able to work around that. We brought in what was unconventional in exams, to say children could write some earlier, some later. And it brought other risks as well, because some learners had to be quarantined or to be kept in a room and not move, not talk to each other until we're able to get the situation of power back so that they are able to write. Our biggest risks in terms of power, I would say, Dr. Polia, are behind us in terms of the two practical subjects. The nation can be assured that our biggest risks in terms of power when it comes to writing exams were around paper 1 of computer application technology and information technology, and those have happened. Minister, I also want to say that the biggest interruption that we have gone through was COVID, the biggest in the world, which brought the aviation industry down. The planes could not fly because of COVID. First world countries like the UK and others didn't write their public exams. But for 2 years, we sat for the exams. We never even delayed our exams that much. And I want to applaud the team for the level of resilience that they've been able to demonstrate. Our nation, our partners, the leadership in our country, who allowed us to even administer exams when it was extremely difficult to do so. So I would say, having demonstrated that level of resilience and having indicated that the biggest risks in terms of the papers that we had to write is now behind us, we should be able to forge ahead. And we are always prepared for any eventuality, as Mrs. Okubanjo indicated, we even have, in case of anything, we've now even planned for the 14 learners who could not write. And what happened there, learners in the course of writing, they were struck by load shedding. You know, in some cases, it's not really related to load shedding, it's just blackout, which happens because of a stolen, cable at a given point in time. And that's why even ESCOM could not really be able to take charge of everything. In some instances, we even ask provinces to negotiate with municipalities, especially when it comes to marking and the capturing of marks and so on. Those discussions are happening at lower level there in municipalities. So what happened with the 14th, they had written and they have saved the portfolio of their answers. And when the electricity came back, the entire portfolio was blown off. And that's what happens. Some of these eventualities that you cannot anticipate as to how would the computer react when you bring in a generator as opposed to normal, current that has been running. That is exactly what happened there. And those learners will be writing before we finalized our exams. And the date has been set already. And it happened before, not only because of load shedding. In instances where learners save their answers, and when you go to retrieve the portfolio, you find that you can't get it. You need to give those learners the opportunity to rewrite. So it has happened before. That's why we've been able to plan for it. The issue of Plans for further disruptions. We've shared, the risks that we have identified, and we've met with an array of stakeholders. We said to them, have we exhausted the risks that might have a negative effect in the administration of the exams? And everybody said, you have done everything that is humanly possible. We don't see any other risk that we can add to the list that you have. So that's the plan that we have in place, and engaging with various stakeholders as indicated. Community disruption in the Northwest, if we could get specifics in this regard, that would be highly appreciated, Heidi. If you could give us more specifics. We are in constant interaction with provinces. The exam team, they meet in the morning, they meet in the afternoon, even before writing to say, have we scanned the environment? Is everything in place? Then the exam begins. After the exam, you reflect on what has happened and planning for the next day. So we're trying to do that. I spoke to officials of the Northwest before coming to this briefing, Minister, particularly around, I'm surprised that you didn't ask the question about the storm that hit Mhaule, where schools' roofs got blown off. So we've been assured that one secondary school that is writing exams tomorrow, the rooms that are going to be used to write the exams are secured. And the rest of the learners' parents have been informed to keep them at home until the roofs are attended to. So as the minister indicated, we are in the rain season in our country. You will have heavy rain, you will have storms, and we remain alert to all of those. But we are going to make sure that the class of 2021 will definitely sit for the exams. We are even prepared to look for alternative accommodation in case classes where exams are to be administered are not in a suitable condition to write exams. And then the talks to exempt some schools and areas, I think I've addressed that. We've tried. It hasn't worked. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, DJ. Okay, we have one hand, and this is the hand that did not come up in the first round. If there are no other hands, then I'll take this as the second and last round. Ahmed?
Firstly, what I would like to find out regarding load shedding, how will that be worked around during the happening of March? Second one is infrastructure challenges that schools in KwaZulu Natal, that's the province with the highest number of school district exams. What was done for those schools and writing settings to ensure that their status can go ahead as legal? And then finally, with the shortages at schools, I did in the classrooms, school participants and teachers, and also a strong focus on female staff and perhaps the women learners who are very strong in their writing will need water for the sanitation and the menstrual cycle, what's being done around that.
All right, Kala?
My colleague Mona
whether the public service picketing will impact on exams tomorrow.
Thank you very much again, Elijah. So DG will come and explain the public service strike, because it says there was a meeting with unions, and I think he'll explain further what were the discussions. DM, because DM is deployed in KZN, so maybe I was not aware of any problems, but I think the DG will also explain about KZN. Then sanitation and menstrual cycles, is speaking to to people who have had a life long. I've never seen it disrupting anything. Having been a woman, I just don't see the relationship between menstruation suddenly in exams. So maybe the younger ones can, DM cannot answer, but I just don't know, maybe the DM. I don't see it, honestly, in all seriousness, being affected in the exams, because it's girls' experiences throughout the year on an ongoing basis. And I think all of us as women know how to manage it. So exams won't bring any extra challenge. So I'm really not dismissing it, but I just really don't think it's a major problem. Our young girls have gotten accustomed to it and know how to manage. And they menstruate quite early at 13. By the time they reach 18, they know how to manage the situation. So, DM Shambu, you can help me with KZN and DG about the public service strike and what were the discussions with unions. Thanks, Elisha.
Minister, thank you. But I know it's only two things. Minister just wants me to stand up and speak. She always complains that the Deputy Minister also has a voice and a mouth. But really, as Minister indicated, there can be no situation erupting from menstruation during examination. These children have always been at school. If there were problems, would have been told during the course of the year. And we are working with the Department of Social Development. They are distributing the sanitary packs for the girls, especially in the rural and the most vulnerable learners. They do receive the sanitary towels. And even as a department, to some extent, we do assist. And there are so many NGOs who are in consultation with the department, getting exactly where these sanitary towels are needed, and we direct them where they are needed. But generally, I don't think that should be a big problem, Minister. So, in the KZN, after the floods, not all schools in KZN were affected. In most instances, were roads leading to the school, bridges that were wiped. So in the event where schools were affected, mobile classrooms were brought in, and some schools were immediately renovated by the province. So there is no challenge whatsoever when coming to the space of writing examinations and learners coming to schools. Those that were still in some form of centers are primary schools, but some were even incorporated to schools nearby, and some have since been moved back to their schools after all the minor renovations were made. On the public sector, DG, you want to come, but the information received from DG, there is no threat whatsoever, because we met with the 5 key unions. The DG met with them yesterday, not long, and they promised, because they are also interested in this examination. Remember, the unions are the same teachers who are teaching these learners, and they want to see them succeeding. So we are together in this with unions, yet we understand where they have their own plight against government, and they are supported on that one because they also support education, and they are the teachers. They are the ones who are working Saturdays, Sundays, autumn classes, winter classes, they're the same union members, so they cannot disrupt their hard work. So want to take this opportunity and thank them, thank all the 5 unions and all our teachers for the good work they put into the support of the learners until they are ready for the examination. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister and Deputy Minister. Just to add, we met with all the 9 provinces to confirm what we presented today, individually. We call them second phase of engagements with provinces, to confirm what we presented to the portfolio committee, what we presented as part of the technical report today. We've also met with school governing body associations. I think I did mention that. School governing body associations said to us, convey our greatest appreciation and thanks to the 5 teacher unions for the fact that they had already indicated that they were willing to accept the offer that government was making, and that they are going to make sure that the exam is not disrupted. It is school governing body associations, professional bodies who said to us yesterday that we are ready to do everything what is humanly possible to make sure that exams proceed without any untoward incident that might come to their attention. So you've got the support of the SGB, the support of the 5 teacher unions, even professional bodies in education. The Minister addressed the issue of water. Deputy Minister addressed the one of schools in KZN, so those are fine. Capturing of marks. What we have done is that, unlike what used to happen before, provinces have now become extremely innovative, where the capturing of marks is also going to happen at the marking centers, but it is also going to continue centrally. And they have brought alternative power, such as generators and others, which they have used before, which are now going to be used for the capturing of marks. So the capturing of marks will not be affected by load shedding at all, because what's going to happen, schedules of intense capturing will also happen outside the schedule of load shedding, but when load shedding happens, the generator will be there to take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you, DM. Thank you, DJ. Just before we close, I'd like to say that the Minister will be in Tshwane tomorrow at the Nelmapia Secondary School, together with the MEC of Education in Gauteng, Mr. Chilwane, and the Deputy Minister will be in KwaZulu-Natal at the Umlazi district with the MEC for Education, Ms. Mhaule Fraser. With those words, we have brought the briefing to an end. We have issued invites already to the 2 events I've mentioned. So, yes, thank you for coming through. There are refreshments just outside the door on this side of the hall. Thank you so much. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, members of the media.
You know,